This has been a long time coming and might possibly even be overdue, but it is time for the Washington Wizards and Bradley Beal to finally part ways. Bradley Beal is currently having an MVP caliber season on a team that is currently second worst in the Eastern Conference, with only the Pistons keeping them out of the basement. With Bradley Beal's season, it is just not fair to Beal to have him keep playing on a team that is not going to be winning games, and it's not for the Wizards to have a player in his prime when they could be trading for young assets to join Rui Hachimura and Deni Avdija. So without further ado, this is going to be the top 5 trade destinations for Bradley Beal. At number 5, we have the Atlanta Hawks. As of the making of this recording, the Atlanta Hawks are currently 8-8, which is good enough for 7th in the Eastern Conference. Although they are clear playoff contenders, they definitely want to take it to the next step with Trae Young and John Collins, and Bradley Beal would be the perfect player to do that. A trade for Bradley Beal could include DeAndre Hunter, Tony Snell, Onyeka Okongwu, as well as a future second round pick, and possibly even a first round pick, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to leave it at a second. Although this seems like a hefty price for Bradley Beal, remember that Bradley Beal is one of the best players in the league, and combining Bradley Beal with Trae Young would be one of the most deadly backcourts in the NBA. Add that to the fact that the Atlanta Hawks are extremely deep, as they also have players like Bogdan Bogdanovic, Danilo Gallinari, and Kevin Huerter to hold down the forward spots, as DeAndre Hunter and Onyeka Okongwu, who play a lot of 3 and 4, would be departing. This would greatly benefit both sides, as the Atlanta Hawks would receive their third star to join Trae Young and John Collins and make a big three with one veteran and 2 young players for him to mentor. As well, the Washington Wizards with their very young team, especially with Rui Hachimura and Deni Avdija, are gaining DeAndre Hunter and Onyeka Okongwu to their young squad to really help build for the future. The Washington Wizards, aside from Beal and Westbrook, actually have a very young team, including Cassius Winston, the aforementioned Deni Avdija, and Rui Hachimura, as well as Thomas Bryant. So adding 2 more young players to that squad could be a huge difference maker for the Washington Wizards. At number 4 is the Toronto Raptors. Despite the 2-8 start for this season, the Raptors have finally began to pick up the pace, winning 5 of their last 6 games, and are currently 6-9 as of this recording, and as well are only a few games out of the NBA playoffs. So if the Toronto Raptors were to get another star, they could really make a difference in the Eastern Conference and possibly even get back to contending. So a trade for Bradley Beal to the Toronto Raptors could entail Kyle Lowry, OG Anunoby, Terrence Davis, as well as 2 future first-round picks going to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Bradley Beal and Mo Wagner being there for salary reasons. Like the Atlanta Hawks trade, OG Anunoby and Terrence Davis are 2 very talented young players that the Washington Wizards could continue to build around. As well, they'd have Kyle Lowry, which would be a bit awkward with Russell Westbrook, but I'm sure they could make a trade with either one of them, or possibly just cut one if they really have to. But aside from that, they're getting OG Anunoby and Terrence Davis, who are 2 very good young players. Terrence Davis and OG Anunoby are both very good shooters. Anunoby is one of the best perimeter defenders in the league and can also play a bit of power forward because of how strong he is. And the Raptors, of course, will be getting Bradley Beal, a perennial all-star and one of the best players in the league, as well as Mo Wagner, who's really just there for salary reasons. Bradley Beal joining Fred VanVleet, who would be the starting point guard if Kyle Lowry was to get shipped off, and Pascal Siakam would be another dangerous big 3 that the East would have to reckon with. Would they be good enough to beat Milwaukee or Philadelphia? Possibly not, but they definitely give them a run for their money, and they'd be, at the very worst case scenario, 1 more piece away from being true championship contenders. So if the Raptors were to get Beal, they'd still have some work to do, but they'd have other trade assets such as Norman Powell in order to get the job done. At number 3 is the New York Knicks. No trade rumor is complete without the New York Knicks scenario, and this is the one for Bradley Beal. So the Knicks are currently 8th place in the Eastern Conference, looking to contend for the playoffs, and Bradley Beal could just put them over the hump. So, the possible trade for Bradley Beal would include Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, Kevin Knox, as well as their own future first-round picks in 2021 and 2023. Many fans may be hesitant to give up RJ Barrett, however, Bradley Beal is worth that risk, as they also have Obi Toppin and Mitchell Robinson to join Bradley Beal for a possible big 3 in the future, as Bradley Beal still has plenty of years left in his prime. If the New York Knicks were to do this, they may not quite be championship contenders yet, but if they continue to develop Obi Toppin and Mitchell Robinson, and possibly trade Dennis Smith Jr. and Frank Ntilikina for someone, they could really do some damage. Bradley Beal would elevate this team to a top 5 seed possibly, and the Knicks would be one of the more fun teams to watch in the Eastern Conference. So if the Knicks were to do this, it may not lead to a championship, but it would certainly lead to some fun years for this franchise, like the Indiana Pacers during the Big Three era in Miami. Now the next two are the ones that get really interesting. And at number 2, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. The 76ers are finally hitting their stride, as they are currently first place in the Eastern Conference as of this recording at 12-5. Although the 76ers look really good, they may want to really solidify their spot at number 1 in the East and try to make one final trade. And this trade could be for Bradley Beal. The trade could look, and it would be a lot simpler than other trades, but it would be Bradley Beal for Ben Simmons and the 2022 first round pick. Ben Simmons is not on the same level as Bradley Beal when it comes to scoring. Although Simmons is slightly better at defense, Bradley Beal is the better overall player and would lead to more wins alongside Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris. Ben Simmons, in turn, would be going to Washington, where he would be likely their starting power forward or small forward and be a really good player alongside this young team, as Ben Simmons himself is only 24 years old. If this trade was to happen, the Philadelphia 76ers would more than likely be getting that number 1 spot in the Eastern Conference and possibly even go all the way, as a team of Tobias Harris, Bradley Beal, and Joel Embiid would be almost unstoppable. Now, many might say that Ben Simmons is probably worth more than Bradley Beal, and that may be true in a few years, but as of right now, Bradley Beal is playing on a much higher level than Ben Simmons and would be a much bigger player when it comes to playing in the NBA playoffs than Ben Simmons, as this seems to be their ideal season. And finally, at number 1, the Miami Heat. Despite being the reigning Eastern Conference champions, the Miami Heat are at a meager 6-9 this season. If the Miami Heat really want to step it up, they're definitely going to need to make a trade for someone like Bradley Beal. A trade for Bradley Beal could include Bam Adebayo, Andre Iguodala, Myers Leonard, and the 2023 first round pick. Now, it could either be Myers Leonard or Avery Bradley, as the Miami Heat will need a big man. However, Myers Leonard is not as valuable as Avery Bradley currently is, and they could flip Avery Bradley for a big man later on. But let's just assume that it'll be Myers Leonard. So the deal would be Bradley Beal for Bam Adebayo, Andre Iguodala, and Myers Leonard. The main piece here for the Washington Wizards is obviously Bam Adebayo, who is one of the best young centers in the league, and they're also getting a first round pick. However, they're not going to get Tyler Herro because Tyler Herro is not worth anything less than Michael Jordan and LeBron James, both in their primes. So they're going to have to settle for Bam Adebayo, as well as the first round pick, which would be a really nice stepping stones as their team is very young, and then they could end up flipping Thomas Bryant for another guard, or possibly packaging him as a sweetener with Westbrook. Meanwhile, the Miami Heat team Bradley Beal up with Jimmy Butler, and the two of them could be one of the best dynamic duos in the league. As well, you have Tyler Herro, who would be playing at the 3, and you still have Avery Bradley and Kendrick Nunn playing for the team as well. So both teams would really benefit from this, and it is currently the trade that I want to see the most. And I don't know about you guys, but I think that it would be the most exciting, and both sides should definitely consider it. Bam Adebayo, of course, is very valuable to the Heat, but for a superstar like Bradley Beal, they may have to make an exception, and both teams are really going to get what they want from this, as the Washington Wizards get their young core, and they can really build around Adebayo, Hachimura, and Avdija, while the Heat get Jimmy Butler and Bradley Beal to build around for the NBA playoffs, as they're going to try to get back to the finals, even if it takes everything that they've got.